thanks for the patience. Personally, of course, I got a bit nervous already down there in the queue, but on the other hand, of course, we are very, very pleased about the outturn, especially so, as it seemed that today is, invitation-wise, a fiercely contested day in Brussels. This was at least my impression, receiving like quite some invitations, not only for today, but the whole week. Many circulating around our topic, industrial policy. So we are really very happy that we are having such a participation here today. As Claudia already said, I'm Claudia Detsch. I'm head of the Competence Center for Climate and Social Justice of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, based here in Brussels. And of course, also in the name of our colleagues from the FES EU office here in Brussels, we want to give you a warm welcome. Thank, of course, FEPS for this cooperation. We maintain quite a close cooperation in, I'd say, all working areas, but of course, especially in energy, climate, and industrial policy. And as we've already heard, and some of you might remember, maybe were participating last year, that we held a conference on progressive economic policy last year. And we found this very valuable and therefore wanted to pick up where we left off. And of course, even more so, as we are now 1 year from the publication of the Draghi report, which many saw as a wake-up call. So it seemed like the right time to resume the initiative, together with the key partners already mentioned by Chloe. And I already said industrial policy. Yeah, I mean, safe to say that this is one of the most pressing topics right now in these times, which certainly are not lacking in pressing issues. We know competitiveness, that's the big mantra. And rightly so. I mean, we are under a lot of pressure, yeah. The extent of it, I think we could not have imagined a few years ago. At least this is my case here. We are facing job losses. We are facing relocations. So yes, of course, we have to talk about industrial policy and competitiveness. But that we agree on the urgency does not say then much or anything about how we will achieve this international competitiveness, what a competitive EU should even look like, and of course what instruments in practice serve this purpose. And of course, even less so when it comes to our core question also of the day, I'd say, yeah, and how in a progressive view, a clean, a just and competitive European industry is to be built, and especially those two first cornerstones, clean and just, can be upheld. So how can we fend off the attacks? Because, I mean, quite a few people these days try to convince the public that the less clean and the less just, the more competitive we are going to be. And it's not just that we don't like this as progressives. We know that it is not true, that this would weaken us. It would hurt workers, it would hurt the citizens, and it would leave the European Union much weaker. So there's a lot of stake right now, and therefore it's all the more important for us to discuss our strategies and also the means to regain the upper hand in the public debate. Because I think we are really in a kind of two-front battle here. And here in Brussels, in the member states, yes, of course, but also in the public debate. We work quite a lot in the Competence Center on communication, climate communication. So for me, it's always important also like to find a balance, being quite on the alert when it comes to all those attacks, but of course, on the other hand, be careful that we are not engaging ourselves in a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, we put this question there in the program, is the Green Deal still alive? I'd say yes, it is. And yes, we keep it. So there I'm saying we also have to find the right balance here on the progressive side. So we have enough room for maneuver, yeah, to ward off those attacks, because I'd say there are so many contradictions in this counter-narrative we are faced with right now. Why should the EU lower the standards? We are never going to win this race to the bottom. Yeah, others can do that much better than we are going to do this. And on the contrary, upholding the values we are known for can work to our advantage, yeah, also with our international partners. I mean, of course, and I guess we are going to talk about this afternoon, not all instruments we know are equally popular, but in general, I'd say standing up for our values and being reliable also in our cause can serve as a selling point, and I think it's really about getting this message out. It's what we want to do this day, talk about what kind of competitiveness we envision, talk about concrete strategies and instruments, and prepare ourselves for the public debate, so a lot to do. And I'm really happy to have, in this framework of our close cooperation with FEPS, those main progressive partners on board. Chloe already mentioned for this very important discussion today. Special thanks, of course, to the PES group here in the Committee of the Regions for hosting us. And last point, I would like to give a welcome to our partners from trade unions in various European countries. We are going in the FES to meet tomorrow for an internal workshop. And we wanted to make good use, of course, of this conference here as well. This is part of our cooperation with the German Trade Union Confederation. So we're very much looking forward to today's debate, because I think it will serve us as an important source for tomorrow. And I hope, but I'm quite convinced that this is true for everybody participating today. So thanks a lot. And back to Chloe or László.
Good morning. On behalf of FEPS, I would also like to welcome you all in this day-long conference on just transition and the economic policy and the broad economic agenda of the European Union. This is the second such policy conference which we together organize, and we really cherish this partnership with the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and proud of the cooperation also with the Committee of the Regions, which is hosting us. I would like to start with the same reference which Claudia already made. Indeed, 1 year ago, September 2024, was a very important time. In fact, 3 important events happened. One was the policy conference, which we jointly organized with FES. The second one was the launch of the Draghi report by Mario Draghi and Ursula von der Leyen. And the third one, and perhaps the most consequential, that I launched my Substack. And it turned out to be very important, because in preparation for this introduction, I found a lot of insight regarding what happened in this 1 year. And indeed, I would like to highlight 10 important points about what happened in this last 1 year. The focus, of course, has been on competitiveness. And the big question is what circle we have made in this year, basically from Draghi to Draghi. Draghi became the source of wisdom for the European Union, thanks to the invitation of Ursula von der Leyen, who asked Mario Draghi to deliver this report on the future of European competitiveness some time ago. As you know, Mario Draghi was the one who saved the euro in 2012 simply by telling the markets he would do whatever it takes as the president of the European Central Bank. But he was also among the authors of the 4 presidents' report in 2012 and the 5 presidents' report in 3 years later. So this is his second coming. And by presenting the Draghi report, the message was clear. Number one, the European economy is in a great trouble, and we need to do something massive, something fundamental. And then the second point, what the second message was, a kind of reassurance that the European Union leadership has a plan, and then they know what needs to be done. And thanks to Draghi, the competitiveness has been confirmed as a part of the catechism of the European Union, And Draghi often appears and reappears as the pontifex of the EU, last time on the first anniversary of the presentation of the report, when he actually had to note that not much progress happened in practice. Right? So it's something after 1 year we have to admit that progress is partial, progress is very, very slow, but this is not the main problem in my view. The main problem comes much earlier. This is Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize winner economist, who already 30 plus years ago demonstrated that the whole concept of the competitiveness has a limited usefulness. In fact, Draghi himself refers to this. Those of you who went to La Hulpe when there was a social summit, Draghi already made this presentation, and he already cited Krugman, who in the 1990s indeed published a booklet under the title "A Country is Not a Company." And if a country is not a company, then the European Union is not a company either. So there has to be a distinction between how business organizations are run and how national and international economic policies are made. But why was it so interesting in the 1990s? Because it was understood after Maastricht that there is a deflationary effect of the macroeconomic framework. And once it was understood, there was a search for some kind of competitiveness recipe, which resulted in the production of the Lisbon strategy. I'm not going to cite this, but the Lisbon strategy wanted to find the competitiveness through a knowledge-based approach and investment in human capital, etc. But in reality, at the time of the Eurozone crisis, what we saw was a relapse into a focus on reducing costs and especially wage costs and public expenditure. Now, enter Ursula von der Leyen. She entered politics very young. And since 1 year ago, competitiveness, thanks to her, is all around the language of the European Union, and even the structure of the Commission has been adjusted in order to demonstrate this. But what Draghi proposed was not simply a change in the elevator music. He actually said 1 year ago, alongside Ursula von der Leyen, that the European public needs to be alarmed. He said that either the EU embarks on the road he outlined or faces a slow agony. And that's indeed the risk in the case of a slow or partial implementation. And thanks to a variety of political factors, what we have been witnessing indeed is that there is a cherry picking. Instead of putting the full agenda into the implementation process, basically von der Leyen is focusing on 3 issues in the policy agenda. One is deregulation, the other one is financialization, and the third one is militarization. And this reductionist approach is indeed embodied in the first major document of the second von der Leyen Commission, which is the so-called competitiveness compass. Let me talk about this in a few minutes. This came out on the 29th of January and focuses on 3 key areas of action: innovation, decarbonization, and security. There are many flagship measures outlined in this: closing the innovation gap, decarbonization and competitiveness, and reducing the excessive dependencies and increasing security as well. Now, many of you have read it. I'm not going to go into the details, but the point indeed in this compass is that we don't know how evenly all the objectives or the nominal objectives will be really followed in the reality. Another important point is that the approach of this compass does not acknowledge that different parts of the European Union have different problems with growth. The growth engine of Germany broke down for completely different reasons in the last 5 years than the Italian one 25 years ago. So you cannot have just one single recipe to address all these diverse growth crises. So we see a lot more ambition on the side of deregulation and financialization than on finding a solution to reform the economic and monetary union and create a proper EU fiscal capacity for investment. Now, why is this bias? Because it's also a transatlantic trend. The transatlantic trend is indeed symbolized by this Argentinian president, who is a kind of symbol, who is a kind of team mascot for all those who want to pursue this kind of ultra-Reaganite deregulationist agenda in North as well as South America, but also more widely. So this shift in focus has been helped by these developments on the other side of the Atlantics, and the new trend is a kind of anarcho-capitalism. A lot of people don't notice that in reality what Milei induced is an industrial decline and a sharp rise of poverty in Argentina. Nevertheless, some of these ideas and the symbols remain very, very strong and influential. Just like in the 1970s, Chile was the laboratory of the Chicago neoliberals and the neoconservative practitioners in the United States and the UK. Now it is Argentina, which is the test ground for this capitalist revolution. If you want to read something better than my Substack, you should read Martin Sandbu, the European economics commentator of the Financial Times, who at the time delivered a very sharp critique of this new direction. He noted that there is a European inferiority complex, and that also helps recycling the neoliberal policies. Very few in Europe dare to challenge the dominant over-regulation narrative, which is now used as a basis to deregulate the economy in various ways and dilute social and environmental commitments. According to Sandbu, today the EU is set to repeat some of the past mistakes because von der Leyen is selectively following Draghi's guidance, translating it into just deregulation and financialization, even if that contradicts the developments of the last decade, including her own recent policies in her first mandate. The threat which we will also talk about today is indeed very crucial in the field of the Green Deal. Claudia already mentioned this. There is it's no surprise that a lot of people on the side of big business assume that the competitiveness compass is there to do away, to finish the so-called Green Deal. However, contrary to public perceptions, this should have been primarily an investment program and only in second place a regulatory one. Its implementing methods should be revised, but not its objectives. It will remain a progressive responsibility to ensure that while its bathwater is thrown out, the baby is saved and the Green Deal can live and deliver in the future. In fact, Mario Draghi is an ally for those who are keen to save the EU Green Deal as a policy package for climate protection and sustainability. Now, the next inspiration the competitiveness agenda gave to EU policy is about the MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, which saw a new proposal under the umbrella of competitiveness, a competitiveness fund. However, if you look at it close, it's again more an exercise in rebranding and repackaging rather than a serious one to close the so-called investment gap. And there is some good inspiration in this competitiveness fund from the previous Juncker plan and the Invest EU program, but the volume is lacking. The volume is not serious. And then with the new MFF proposal, von der Leyen is basically rebuilding the glass ceiling, which previously was assumed above the multi-annual financial framework of the EU. Draghi indeed is very critical, directly and indirectly. Recently, he made a very interesting speech in Rimini, of all places, where he emphasized that only forms of common debt can support large-scale European projects that fragmented and insufficient national efforts would never be able to implement. So there's a lot to reconsider regarding the financial power, the financial might of the European Union. By the way, in this Rimini speech, Draghi referred to neoliberalism as a dogma of the past. Now, let's not forget that Mario Draghi was not alone thinking about the future of the European economy and how to improve its performance. Enrico Letta, a little bit earlier, published a very important report about how to complete the single market. In a lot of discussions, Draghi and Letta are mentioned alongside, not only because they both were Italian prime ministers, but because they propose very smart solutions. I think it was noted that Letta introduced the concept of the freedom to stay, which would require a genuine spread of economic opportunities to each and every corner of the European Union, providing quality education to young people everywhere, and implementing youth guarantee effectively to facilitate school-to-work transitions, and so on and so forth. Letta's approach would justify those who consider the single market and cohesion policy basically the two sides of the same coin. And finally, the competitiveness compass, let's praise it for a moment, mentions the European Pillar of Social Rights as a source of competitiveness, literally. How serious this commitment is and what it implies in practice remains to be seen. Those of us who believe that the EU needs to find a path to recovery without dropping social and environmental standards must learn from two further reports, which I would recommend. One was delivered by Commissioner Ferreira with the assistance of the LSE Professor Andres Rodriguez Pose on cohesion policy, and the other one a year before by Anna Diamantopoulou about the future of the welfare states. And all these reports collectively provide the necessary insight and wisdom for a progressive approach to define and discuss the future of EU policy. The search for a new economic growth model, which I think is the main point here, under the banner of competitiveness, should revive the endeavour of long-term planning with result orientation, which also necessitates targets. But most importantly and urgently, the tools of an EU-level industrial policy would need to be found. Under the recent shocks, and there have been many, the progressive potential of the European Union should be rediscovered. It can be the guide to the necessary reset of our economic governance mechanism, but also a new commitment to social cohesion. Thank you very much.